Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad. Can you believe it's almost Christmas? Wow. I mean, that's just flying by.
It sure is. It seems like we were just at Thanksgiving. We were just at Halloween.
And did you finish Christmas shopping?
I've still got a little bit left to do.
Well, I did mine, so I'm all set. I'm pretty happy about that. Here we are in the upper Midwest. Isn't that snow beautiful? It's just so great. I went out for a walk today. When the sun comes out, it's so bright on this new fallen snow, and it just really is exciting. But it's so bright, I got to wear shades.
Dad, I want to tell you a story that happened at work this week, and I think it's going to be a good springboard for our conversation here today. At my work, they have a start every call. We ask the person's name, and then we just ask permission. Can I use your first name? Now, this was a caller that she was already frustrated with us. There was something that she didn't like about what our company had done. She was starting off mad. And when I asked her if I could call her by her first name, she said, I am just offended that you would even ask that. What are we in, a place where you can't call somebody by their names? I don't do these pronouns, and I don't do. And I thought, whoa, what? I did none of this. I don't know what you're talking about here. And I said, well, if you'd prefer, I can call you Mrs. Johnson or whatever her name was. No, that's not, but I'm mad about the opposite. You should just be allowed to call people by their names. And I thought she was just being mad for no reason at all.
Sure.
And I understand. I'll cut people slack. She was not yelling at me as a person. She was yelling at me as the representative of the company. But wouldn't you know, I was so frustrated with her.
Yep.
It sat with me, I want to say, that entire day, and then the next day, it was probably a good 2 days that this negative energy just sat with me. And I had another one of my then longtime people that I've talked to, and she called me back and said, hey, I'm looking to just take a look and make sure we're good for this next year. And she said, how are you doing? And I said, oh, things are going well, but it's rough. And she mentioned that she worked in customer service and sometimes she had difficult people. And I said, I had a difficult person the other day. And she said, I learned one thing in my job as a customer service manager. She said, I developed a pretty tough skin when I was dealing with people because you're always going to get people that are difficult. But every now and then, one person would just kind of get through that and would just really make you frustrated. But she said, I would look in the mirror and I would remind myself, she would say, I have to remember who the heck I am, except she didn't say heck.
Yes, right.
And I thought, that's really good advice. There are times where the things that are going on just make you feel frustrated and you're down and you think, I don't want to feel this way, but man, things are just really hard. You actually said to me the other day, because I had been going through and doing a lot of sales, there was a lot of pressure in my department. You said, if you have a bad day, don't let yourself get so down. I wanted to have a conversation with you about this because this affects us as LGBTQ people. That we go through our lives feeling like, especially when we're in the closet, there are all of these pressures of what we need to do and who we need to be. And inside, we're trying so desperately to hide. When you finally come out, you realize, or I realize, I wish I would have just been myself. I wish that I would have had enough self-esteem at that time to say, you know what? I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to remember who the heck I am.
It seems to me in my life, even back when I was very young, the advice I got, and I'm sure you did too, and I'm sure every one of our listeners did, is be yourself. A lot of people don't understand. But they're not themselves. They put on a false front. When they are suddenly removed from that situation, they're different people. And they have put on a false front because they have to. So they think. But in reality, when you're yourself and people see the real you, either they accept you as you are or they don't accept you. And either way, you know where you stand. And either way, you are more comfortable.
That's a really good point. I'm thinking through, there are a lot of people that are very upfront about who they are. And I'm sure you can think of people that stand for something that you disagree with or stand for something that you're not fully in line with, but they don't hide it. They're not jerks about it, but they don't hide who they are. And I bet you respect them for that.
I do. I do. I can think of two that come to mind right away. One of them is in my social club, and the other one is a relative by marriage, which is interesting. So in a situation like that, I thank them in my head for being the real them that they really are. They're not going to put on a different error because they think that's what I want to see. They're themselves. They're the real them. But we're good friends, and that's fine.
There's a respect that comes when you know that they're willing to be themselves, regardless of what you think.
Yes.
How do you get that? How do you develop that, especially if you're scared to come out and be yourself? If you're scared, you think, okay, what if it's going to be like American Idol? And I come out there and I think here I'm this great singer. And then I come out and Simon Cowell says, you really sucked right there. I think we have a fear of that if I'm my true self is going to end up being cringe. And then the people around me are going to look and think, oh, how do you develop that confidence, do you think?
Well, I'm not sure how, but I can tell you I have developed the concept of I'm the real me. And I can think of two situations, both pastors, who told me it's amazing when people think they're around the pastor, they aren't the same people as they are somewhere else. A pastor from long ago that was your pastor when you were a kid told me he used to wear a toupee, and one day he decided he wasn't going to wear it anymore. And he went to the restaurant and he sat down with the guys having coffee, and some of them didn't recognize him. And he said, I couldn't believe how different the conversation was. They were being themselves. But when they were in front of who they thought was the pastor, it was a different situation altogether. One of our guests here, Mother Julie, she said the same thing. She said there are people that act differently around her because she's the pastor. Everybody is just a person. They're no different or special than anyone else. When they're the real them, that's who they are. And I'm not sure either one of the people I was thinking of was any different. But the people around them thought they needed to be.
Really, the key to all of this is just deciding this is who I am, and I don't care if you see who the real me is. I'm going to allow you to see the real me because I am okay with who the real me is.
When you first came out, I didn't want to share that with anyone. Now I'm very open about it, and in fact, I'll even talk about it. Well, do you know my daughter is transgender and X and Y? And they're kind of surprised that I'm that comfortable without it, because it's no different than saying, oh, I've got a 15-speed bike. You talk about something else, and it's that. That's the way it is now. When I'm the real me and I just say what. Besides, I'm going to be 80 years old. It's time I can say what I want.
So if you could go back and give your 20-year-old self some advice on self-esteem, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, that would be there. You don't really gain anything by being somebody other than you really are. And you're much more comfortable being who you really are. Which means if you out there as a listener are listening to this and you're part of the supportive group, it means you should be happy that one of your siblings or your daughter or son or father or whoever it is has come out and they're being themselves because it releases everything and it makes you much more comfortable. You're wearing your comfortable clothes instead of that tuxedo that you're not comfortable with anyway, but you feel you have to wear it.
It's like the fine china that you think you get out only at the special holidays and then you're all worried about it.
Yeah, you know what I found out about that now?
What's that?
Our kids don't want that. And nobody wants that stuff anymore. You know, when we're sitting around keeping the fine china around, well, we never use it.
And then you know what? And then what your favorite utensil is, or your favorite whatever, it ends up being something like an old peanut butter jar, and you fill it up with water, and that's your favorite water. It's an old peanut butter jar.
Yes.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yes, but don't spread it around.
So, we have social pressures for a reason, though. That we're social creatures as humans.
Yes.
And we feel uncomfortable sometimes being ourselves because sometimes some of who we are is not acceptable. And social pressures are there for a specific reason. So that if you're somebody who's a jerk, then you hope that the social pressures are going to keep you from being who you are and keep you from saying things that maybe in your mind you think mean thoughts all the time, but you wouldn't say them because of the social pressures. What do you think is the difference between being yourself in a positive way and when does it flip over to being yourself in a negative way where really you could pull back? Do you think there is such a thing, or?
Oh, sure there is. There are people who feel that they have to show the tough side of themselves for some reason because it's the only way they think they can be effective, and that usually is in a boss and employee situation that people feel that way. Although I had a long time ago before I owned my own company, I had a wonderful boss that could be tough when he needed to be, but to me, he was always just a great friend. What we're talking about here is self-esteem. What you're asking is, how do we capture it? How do we hang on to it? And if we start to lose it, how do we bring it back?
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about.
And I've gone through a difficult week here as we're recording this. I've gone through a difficult week where I've had a lot of difficulties in performing at my job. No, and I've gone through other times in life where I had difficulties performing maybe at school or times where I wanted to do something else and whatever. There's lots of scenarios where you're having difficulty and you start to feel like it reflects on yourself. How do you get that back?
Well, I'll tell you. Coincidentally, I just came out with my autobiography. And if anybody wants to read it, you can get it on Amazon. It's called I'm Hearing It, and it's HEARIN'. I'm hearing it, because it's an expression we used to use when I was in the military. And in there are two chapters that actually follow one another. It's about self-esteem. And the first chapter is called Just As I Thought. And it's a story about being caught in 7th grade with a off-color joke. And the principal at the time decided he was going to make an example out of me. And he took the whole day with me and took me back home and showed my mother. And it was terrible to the point where I lost complete self-esteem about anything. How did I get it back? I got it back because I ended up in the next chapter having a paper route. And in that paper route, one of the things we were asked to do at the time, this goes back into the 50s, we would sell a subscription to the newspaper, daily newspaper. And along with that, there was an opportunity to pick magazines, and each week that would be included with your money that I collected. Well, when they started this contest, we had about 200 paper boys. And we worked the contest, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. And I ended up being one of the top 3 paper boys. And the next year, I did it again, and I was the top paper boy. And the third year, I was the top paper boy in sales. And I realized sales is my forte. That doesn't mean I had something that made me so much superior than other people, but it gave me the confidence to realize there's something I can do pretty well. And even though I had that terrible punishment that affected me so dramatically, it really was devastating for me. By having something that I thought I'm a success at gave me a new type of self-confidence. And it was so powerful that I realized I can do this. This gave me the self-esteem that I was really looking for. And that's how I came out of it. So when you ask, how do you do that? Well, one way is, what are you really good at? Right now, I think you're really good at making this podcast sound really, really great. Not me. So, and I think that's one of the things that you could be especially proud of. And I hear it so often when I run into people who are some of our listeners. When we had my granddaughter in here who spoke about what life is like in high school for a senior. Wow. Having done over 60 podcasts, she moved up from the 10 most popular to the 8th to the 6th to the 4th. She's now the 3rd most popular podcast we have done. We've done, well, we're almost 70 now, a podcast doing every week. It was just really, really strong.
And that one, you can go back and listen to that one. It's August 21st. What is high school like today? An interview with an LGBTQ senior.
That gave her a little bit more self-esteem as well, to find out that she was getting all of these compliments. In the beginning, she was kind of embarrassed about it. Now she's at the point where she's pretty comfortable with. If you haven't heard that one, I highly encourage you to listen to it. She's really done a great job, and you would think that she's much more advanced in her age than she was.
Coming back to your story, I remember a parallel with myself, and I'm sure you probably remember this. Maybe you don't, but I remember it very, very well. When I was in high school, I had a time where I was in a classroom and we had some time, and so we could kind of goof off a little bit. And I was over, there was a window and it looked across the parking lot to another classroom. And it was the only classroom in the building that looked this way. So the other people in the other classroom were looking across, and there was a glare there. I couldn't even see who there was, but I was there and I thought I was going to be really funny. And so I flipped off the person over there, and then ha, 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 ha. Well, on the other side, it turned out it was our next door neighbor. And he said, that little Jones kid just flipped me off. And the teacher wrote up a referral. And so then that came back. And then, of course, then that gets sent to the parents and all of these things. And I was really, really, I don't know, probably in 7th or 8th grade. And I was extremely embarrassed. And I had to go in and meet with the principal, and then they gave it to you, and then we had a little talk about it. And very quickly, do you remember that? No. See, it was not even that big of a deal for you, but for me, I remember it because I was extremely ashamed of it in the moment. I thought, I can't believe I would do something like this. In the moment, I thought, I'm going to do this to get a laugh, but boy, I was really extremely embarrassed. And we had a little talk about it, and you ended up saying, so, well, you learned a lesson from this, and, look, I want you to know I accept you, and it's not that big of a deal. But I was really terrified about having that conversation with you.
We're very impressionable in 7th grade.
And so much of this conversation has to do with shame. And especially when we're talking about the LGBTQ community, we have so much shame that we're carrying because we feel like if only somebody knew, they would think, what the heck? How many years did we go? How many movies were there in the 80s and the 90s that made jokes about somebody, a man, secretly wearing women's clothing? We were constantly saying we were sending little messages that this is a shameful thing. So that if you're transgender, I better not let anybody know. I better never let the secret out because if anyone knew, I couldn't face anybody ever again.
I had a similar situation because I had a problem with alcohol, and I abused it until I was 36 years old. But back then, it was always, not always, but almost always in movies and TV, it was always humorous. It was supposed to be a funny thing. It was supposed to be, everybody would laugh at that and how funny that is. And it's not funny, not to me. And it's a similar situation.
It is. It's the same thing. And thankfully, we as a culture have come a long way. But you still can experience a lot of shame. And so from my story, it mattered so much to me that you were there. And if you had had somebody like that to say, when you were young, to say, Joey, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're not a bad person. You know, you are not the kid that we are all ashamed of or embarrassed by. That would have changed your life.
So you talk about how do you get over that? You have a problem with self-esteem. What do? I can tell you the first thing you would do, treat yourself with kindness and understanding, especially in difficult times. Practice self-compassion, I guess is what I would say. Remember, everybody makes mistakes, and the mistakes don't define your self-worth.
That's a good way to put it. I love from my faith heritage the idea that humans are made in the image of God. And sometimes I need to come back to that and remember that means that's me. That means that's you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about the difference between any human being and an inanimate object. And there's a qualitative difference. You matter in the world not because of what you do, not because of your accomplishments, not because you said the right things or did the right things or did everything the right way. You matter because you are a human being and there is no one like you. Just like we learned with Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers says there's only one you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's true. You know, another thing you can do is you can set realistic goals for yourself, little ones, and then you celebrate that. Going back to that time when I was selling those magazine subscriptions with my paper route, I would go out, they called it canvassing, with the circulation manager. He would take us out, drop them off, and we would work this block and the next block and the next block all over the city. What was nice about that is at the end of the night, I'd come back and I sold 6 or 7 of these, you know, and I would actually feel so good about it. I would celebrate. I would in my mind, I would be sitting back there just so proud of myself for having done what I've done. And I wasn't celebrating in the car with them, although I did when I came in. And I really never knew how many the other people sold unless they were in the car. So, and that was only a small group of people in a car. There were 200 people out there. I didn't know if I was doing really great or not so great at all. But I knew I did it. And I would have so many people when I would try to offer them a subscription that would say, "You're really a good salesman." Yeah, and when you say that to a kid, they think, "Ooh, wow, thank you."
When I first came out, I first came out to a handful of people that I knew were safe people. And I was first experimenting with, let me see how this transition works. And I had a friend from high school that said, hey, if you want to go out for dinner with me sometime and be yourself, be Raya, I'll go out with you and I'll be there to help protect you. And I said, sure, okay, thank you. That means a lot. And it was one of the very first times that I ever went out in public. It was a small goal, but that small goal, when I did that, and I discovered that nobody really looked twice at me. And when I came through at the checkout, we went to Panda Express. And when I came through, they said, and well, ma'am, that's going to be, $8.22. And I paid, and that was it. And we went over, and wow, it was a small goal. And I said, I did this. This was a big thing. I was able to be myself. And you can bet that night when I went back home, I was flying.
Oh, yeah.
Because here was a small goal, and I had set that. If you are in the LGBTQ community yourself and you're not out of the closet yet, you could set yourself a small goal. Maybe there is an LGBTQ club near you that you can visit. Maybe there's not, and you find an online community, or you just send an email to us. You take one small step, and that's going to help dramatically improve your self-esteem.
Tell you what else can improve your self-esteem. Surround yourself with positivity. Hang out with people who are positive. In our state, there was a famous businessman, and his mantra was, don't walk away from negative people. Run. And I remember that, and I thought that makes so much sense.
That is good advice in general. We're grateful to have you here, and we hope that we are your positive environment here, and that you are able to get away from the negativity in your life. We hope that this has helped you out a little bit here today. If it has, shoot us an email. Let us know what you thought. If there's some things that you've done to improve your self-esteem and to kind of get through things, where can they email us, Dad?
Transcendent@gmail.com. We just got an email, and they told us that we are the 12th most popular podcast in Hong Kong in relationships.
In the category of relationships.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That was really a cool thing to see. So we're grateful to all of the listeners that are tuning in faithfully. If you know somebody else that could benefit from this, would you pass that on? That really means a lot to us, and it could mean a lot to them as well.
Yes, if each one of you just have one person, that will help us all. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in every week, and
we'll see you Monday.